Oh, we made it Friday night. We were chit-chatting
Friday night.
before. We already did a podcast before we had a podcast.
It's like pretty usual for us. All
Yeah.
right, so we're getting it out of John. It's end of April. I mean, we're kind of in the height of triathlon training, and yeah, I think people are pretty jazzed up. But the weather's almost perfect for training. Yeah, it's good times right now.
We've got our first Tri Club event tomorrow.
Yep.
If you're listening to this on Friday, the 25th, if you're listening to it after the 26th, well, then the race is already over.
Already.
But yeah, this is such a great time of year. Everyone's gearing up for probably their first race if they haven't already done Oceanside or maybe another race somewhere, Central America, or there's some other places that races have happened, Mexico.
Yeah, no, it's exciting, and I know a lot of our local friends are getting ready for St. George, and it's 2 weeks away. I mean, it's gonna be here before we know it. So yeah, I'm excited to talk triathlons tonight. Um, got a lot of triathlon stuff going on in my brain right now.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's funny, because we did spend half an hour talking before we hit record here about triathlon and things about triathlon. And really this podcast is built out of the love of the sport that both of you and I have.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
So,
tonight, oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, so let's talk about the topic you came up with tonight. So what's your topic?
So the topic I came up with tonight was how to return to triathlon after a long break. And I'm not saying an injury break. I'm saying you've chose to walk away. Maybe it was an injury, but
Hmm.
you take maybe a year off or more. And you're like, I miss it. I want to get back into it. And I wanted to talk about some of the strategies potentially
Hmm.
around that, and maybe some of the pitfalls around that. And you reminded me that you took a 14-year break. But I took a big break from like doing orienteering and running into triathlon as well. I didn't start really into triathlon until I was in my late 30s, like 38 or 39.
Hmm.
Uh, so I had almost a 2-decade break. You had a 14-year break
14-year taper.
or taper, 14-year taper, right? And after that 14 years, I'm sure you felt so unbelievably fresh. But like John, when you go back and you think about your experience coming back into specifically into triathlon,
Hmm.
what are some of the things that you remember that were a challenge for you?
Oh boy, that's a big question.
I know
And
we got a full podcast, so
yeah, yeah. Well, and I like the way that you started in that there's a lot of different reasons someone will step away from the sport. And I think when you're returning, it is important to recognize why you stepped away in the beginning, because when you start getting back into it, you got to take that into account. And you mentioned injuries, maybe it's family issues, maybe it's work wise, and you got a new position and you just couldn't sustain the training, or maybe it was burnout, and maybe it was something where you just lost the love of the sport or competing or doing an event. Who knows? It could be a number of things, but I think that is important to recognize whatever the reason is, because I think that helps you be successful the second time around or third time. Who knows? For me, I stepped away because my wife and I got married. We started having a family. Then I got into a doctoral program, and there were too many tugs in different directions that I just said. At one point, I remember I was running in Texas, in Denton, Texas, and my first son was just born. I didn't want to miss a day. I didn't want to miss anything. I was still in my master's program, trying to work on my thesis, which was on VO2 max while running in the water versus running on land. Super exciting. I still draw on that work today on some of the results. And I was just overloaded. And I remember running, and I was running down a road. This was in Texas, farm country, and their big longhorn steer just looking at me 20 yards away, maybe. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, why am I doing this? And he didn't answer me.
darn it.
But he just looked at me, and I just said, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to walk away from the sport. And I was still enjoying racing and doing quite well at that point, but there were just too many other pulls in a different direction, and I walked away. And I had no regrets walking away. Dove into family life and PhD work, and ultimately starting a new position here at UNLV. And but then at some point, it turned around to coming back. So, anyways, that's my walking away story. Do you have one?
I like to party. I was in college, and yeah, I just like there was too many other things pulling me in different directions, and then same with you, like a career in academia. You know, I moved from a place that had like I was mostly doing orienteering back then, so I moved from a place where I was doing my orienteering to a place in Nevada where there was none.
Yeah.
And I still ran for a while. I didn't do any racing or anything, but I still ran pretty regularly. And then eventually that just kind of went away, and I found other things I like to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then same with you, like got married and had had a real I don't know real life, a different life,
Yeah.
and yeah, and so almost forgot about running, to be completely honest with you. And
Well,
I
you're
never
doing a
was a
lot of
swimmer or
coaching.
biker.
You're
Pardon
doing
me?
a lot of coaching of age group soccer too.
Yeah, exactly. I was working a lot of nights and
Yeah.
weekends.
Yeah.
I'm on my feet all the time. Like I basically had a job where I was on my feet the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I would think about was like go for a run when like you're on your feet for 7, 8 hours a day or longer. It's hard like to think about, oh, I'm going to go for a run. Yeah. So that was kind of why or how I walked away as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
What,
and
what
and
you
I
come?
and I and I didn't build a social network either. Like when I was younger.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah.
So what caused you to come back?
I think we told this story, but I was not well, like physically not well. And I had some issues with my liver and my thyroid and just a bunch of like physical issues that I needed to kind of sort out. And it was weighed too much, and all my metrics were looking bad. And I'm like, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
And so really, it started out being health, and it was running. I enjoyed running, and I was going to the gym. I was lifting weights,
Mm-hmm.
3 times a week, pretty regularly, but I wasn't doing the cardio stuff,
Right.
and I enjoyed it. Like I've always enjoyed running, and so I was like, well, I enjoy that. And this is going to be the thing that helps me, and yeah, so that was. I think a lot of people, it's like that. They start doing endurance stuff for health benefits.
Hmm. Well, that's
How about
great.
how about you? Like the ultimate, like the thing that kind of flipped the switch for you.
Yeah, so there's two ways I tell the story. One is I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in 2001, and really tough period of just trying to be able to be somewhat active. And I eventually reached a point where I really wanted to demonstrate I was in control of the disease as opposed to the disease controlling me, and that got me back in the sport. But the other story I tell is around that same time, Laura went and volunteered to help with the Silverman race, which is the iconic full distance independent triathlon that was here in Henderson, and truly iconic race. I mean, if you did Silverman, that was something you hold on to. It was very dear in life. So, and she came home and said, "Oh, these guys are all so amazing doing this triathlon, and they're doing all this stuff." And I'm like, I just got jealous. I'm like, I could do that. And when we met, I got her to do her first triathlon. So she knew I had a history in the sport. I was like, I'll sign up tomorrow and do one. So it was a mix of an RA story and being jealous and signing up for a triathlon. Signed up for Pumpkin Man, believe it or not, coming back, and that was the first race back into triathlon. And then from there, I actually decided to signed up for Ironman Japan and did that in 2009. And that really was the signal for me, or really the path forward at that point.
Okay. So because you've done triathlon before, and my journey wasn't the same because I'd never swam and I never really rode. Like I rode a bike when I was a kid, but not like we do now. What was kind of the biggest, like, I don't know, I hate to say biggest, but most significant challenges that you went through?
Well, I was still fighting my rheumatoid arthritis, and I was still trying to get it under control. So that was the major challenge. But there was a challenge of being in the sport before, then coming back and trying to get fit after a 14-year taper. I tried to stay active, but it is what it is. And my mind was still 14 years ago. I could put in the volume, I could put in the intensity, I could do all that. And so I had a shift to being patient. And as opposed to saying, okay, well, I still have my training log from back then. No, let me just pick up where I left off.
Yeah.
No, that was not it. And so I was actually smart enough to say, I just need to do really short runs. And I think I was running like a tenth of a mile walking back home, that type of thing. I mean, really low level type of work, but I knew I needed to be patient, one, for the rheumatoid arthritis issues, but then two, just training wise, I needed to reintroduce my body to endurance.
I love what you said about like your mind, right? Because I've worked with several people and I've mentored others on this coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard, even as we get older, right? Our brain keeps going back to the heyday,
Yeah.
right? Where you were basically invincible. You could run all you wanted, all you wanted, swim all you wanted, and you didn't get injured. And the more work you did, the faster you got. And it didn't kind of matter as much how you trained.
Mm-hmm.
It just got faster. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to somebody just a little while ago, and they're a little bit older athlete. And they're like, yeah, I can remember back, 20 years ago, I was like 17-minute 5K. I'm like, well, great, but that was then. Now you're a 30-minute 5K.
Mm-hmm.
And if you train like you used to, thinking you'll get back to a 17-minute 5K, it's a recipe for disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a hard pill for people to swallow, is in their mind, they used to be fast or they used to be invincible. And when you take a break, you're not the same person anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And, I love the fact that you said that you were running like a tenth of a mile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I know you now really well, I think. And you evaluated yourself.
Yeah.
And said, this is what I can do.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing.
Yeah, no, thank you. And, the good thing was I really achieved what I wanted to achieve in triathlon in that first sort of phase of my triathlon career. Now I'm in my second phase, but I really achieved the times, the competitiveness. I checked a lot of boxes, and I was able to walk away very satisfied with what I had accomplished in the sport. And so when I came back, I had no illusions. This was a good thing that I was matured at that point, even as a triathlete, is that I had no illusions of being even competitive at an age group level at all. I knew that the sport had moved beyond me at that point, and I was just really looking to get back into the sport and just show my wife I still got it.
It's so funny that you say, because it reminds me of like my first race back was because I was just running. I wasn't doing triathlon, and my wife had signed up for a 5K, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go look, because I started running again. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
there was a 1 mile option. So I did a 1 mile and a 5K, and I'm like, okay, I'll sign up for the 1 mile. I could run a mile. Well, I'm standing there with 3 kids, like me and like 3 kids, and I'm talking kids like 10 years old. And I'm like, let's go, like 1 mile. But I mean, I'm looking at these kids and I'm like, I'm an adult. Like, come on. But that's where I was.
Yeah, right.
It was a hard pill to swallow. Now I smoked those kids. Don't worry. I left them in my dust.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really, but you kind of got to be where you are. And I also think that sometimes people will, at least people I know that have went through this, will kind of bite off more than they can chew. Now, you said you signed up for Ironman in Japan. Like, that's a pretty big sign up.
Well, it was, but
What was the time frame around that?
that was the rheumatoid arthritis that I wanted to show that I was in control
Right.
of the disease at that point, and so that was really the driving factor. The jealousy had got waned at that point, so yeah, it was much more that I wanted to show that I could be active, show myself that I could be active, and take on such a big challenge. And so that was sort of a neat thing to return to the sport first for sort of a fun reason, and then then the other reason why I was able to return to the sport was the kids learned how to drive, and all of a sudden they didn't need me to drive them around anymore, and we had all this time on our hands. So it was,
So, what was the timeline from like running a tenth of a mile to going to do Ironman Japan?
so I should have put my training log out, but I started training for Pumpkin Man probably 6 months out.
Okay.
I was able to do that in October of 2007. And then I think that January 2008, I think I finally said, I'm going to sign up for an Ironman for Japan 2009, which was, it was a spring. I think it was July or June event. So I probably signed up a year in advance of that. And so I had a year to prepare, and then it was just building on the training for Pumpkin Man, and Pumpkin Man really was a challenge to get ready for. I think I may have placed as Clydesdale for that, and I was super happy just to do it, but let alone get an award. If I don't remember if I did the first year or the second year. I was still Clydesdale for a few years, and but yeah, no. So I had a pretty good period of time for getting ready for Japan. But again, it was just this, it was a slow, consistent progression. And even back then, I had that mindset of just be consistent, do things day in and day out, and then you'll get your fitness back enough to do an Ironman.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was like what changes when you're gone, right? And one of the things that changes is the way we train.
Yeah.
Not just us, but the way the world of triathlon changes,
Mm-hmm.
right? I assume when you were younger, the 80-20 thing wasn't a real thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like being patient wasn't really a thing. Developing this aerobic engine wasn't a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I look back at some of these old triathlon magazines and old articles just because I think it's kind of fun. And you look at, oh, these are the workouts we're doing. It was all high intensity.
Yeah.
Right. And was it Dave Scott or Mark Allen, or who was the one that was first kind of like to do the more?
Yeah, Mark Allen was more the Zen approach to training. So yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but it took a long time for that to filter into triathlon. So if you
Mm-hmm.
came from that era of whatever the training was, and now the training is different, like the science, and not just the science, but just like the zeitgeist of triathlon changes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's difficult, I think, for some people to be like, well, why is it so different now?
Yeah.
And did you experience some of that as well?
I did, but it was interesting. I was still teaching in the area of sports science, in essence, and exercise science, and so I stayed connected academically to the sport, but not to the level that we do now. At that level, it was very superficial, and probably more. My lectures were more based upon my experience in the 80s and early 90s, as opposed to even what was happening in the early 2000s. And so you're right. Everything changed by the time I came back. Not only the training approaches, but gear. No longer would we race in our speedos. There's a lot of different types of approaches to training. You're right. Back in the 80s and early 90s, it was a lot of volume, a lot of intensity. And now it was something a little bit more focused and treating triathlon as a sport as opposed to swimming as a swimmer, biking as a biker, and running as a runner. And I think that the sport really started to evolve that way.
Yeah. And I think that, like I said, I think people sometimes will have a hard time like forgetting what they used to know almost,
That's right. Right.
especially if they were successful. Well, I did
Mhm.
this before and I was really successful, but once again, times change. I love the fact you mentioned equipment. So when you were originally racing, I'm assuming no aero bars.
So there's clip-on aero bars on
You
a road bike. Yeah.
clip on a road bike, but not a time trial bike.
No, no,
Disc wheel,
no, no,
right? Deep dish front wheel, no.
no, no. Yeah.
Did you even know what rolling resistance of your tires was?
I had no idea about rolling resistance back then. No, no.
Tire pressure 130,
Oh,
120.
no, 120. That I know. Yeah.
But you see what I'm saying? So like I've had this conversation with some of the people that I coach that were racing a long time ago,
Mhm.
and you say, hey, we want a tire pressure of 75. Oh, that's crazy,
Yeah, yeah, right. Hmm.
right? What
Yeah.
are you talking about? Well, that's what the tire pressure calculators are saying, and
Hmm.
no, that can't be right. I'm like, times change.
Totally.
Even if you step away for 2 years,
Hmm.
like, where were we at on tire pressures 2 years ago and tire widths?
Yeah.
And like even 2 years ago, disc brakes were not nearly as much of a thing, right? Everyone's
Hmm.
got disc brakes now, and so like times change. And if especially like I think about now, if you came into triathlon today from 10 years ago, your bike is so far out
Oh yeah,
of
totally.
right of aerodynamics. Your
Hmm.
helmet. We talk about helmets, but even if you could get a brand new helmet from 10 years ago compared to a helmet now, you
Hmm.
could be giving up 30 or 40 watts, even if you had the top of the line equipment from a decade ago.
Yeah.
And so that's a consideration. Like, do you want to be competitive? Because if you do, you have to look at your equipment as well.
Hmm.
Off the air, we were talking about materials. Like, what you said you were wearing a speedo, but even a decade ago, the material you raced in
Hmm.
is different.
Well, totally different. Yeah, yeah. The aerodynamics. I was talking with someone earlier today about the aerodynamic aspect of sock design
Yeah,
and how important that is right now. And so yeah, that was not something we were talking about at all in the 80s or early 90s. We had wires sticking out all over the place. Yeah, yeah. It was it was an interesting era. So
and so I think that can be hard for people too, because especially if they have like high end equipment from 10 years ago, like, oh, that's the best of the best stuff, and it's not anymore,
it's right.
right?
Hmm.
And I had this happen with somebody where they tried to sell their stuff from 10 years ago. Well, nobody wanted to buy it.
No, that's right.
Right? It's what's it worth? Nothing. Like I hate to say that, but because it's true, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that those are all important things to think about when you do take a hiatus. It's like this is you have a lot to learn. There's actually a high learning curve. It's almost like being brand new.
Hmm. No, you're right, and that's where it can. This is going back to where we started in terms of why are you coming back, and why did you leave the sport? And because one thing can happen is the new gear can be intimidating, and it could be a barrier to re-entering the sport. Again, fortunately, when I came back, I was not really. I did not have the mindset of trying to be competitive at all. I was just doing. And so at that point, it was a little easier for me to use some of the gear I had before. But yeah, I'm showing up with a steel frame at a bike race with a helmet. I don't even know what my helmet was at the time. And, I've shown up with, my bike would have been, at that point, it would have been 25 years old at that point. So, yeah.
And that can be intimidating, and that can be a
Right,
barrier,
right,
right?
right.
You're racking your stuff and you're looking around like, what is this? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that, and once again, it can happen in a couple of years. Some of the technological changes that happen. How about John? What did you notice as far as just the racing itself and the people?
So everyone looked different because the gear was different in terms of what you were running in and swimming in and what have you. I showed up in my 1989. I still got up my wetsuit, sleeveless, and everyone had very different styles of wetsuit even at that point. People were still welcoming, and that was good because I think right away we started connecting because what Laura was doing racing at that point too. We started connecting with other athletes, and it was not hard to rejoin the endurance community. And so that was the wonderful thing about the sport. And even today, it's really nice to be able to connect with other like-minded people. And so we found some friends early on, and then that led to, oh, let's go bike this way or that way or do that route or do something. And it just is it's encouraging. So I felt welcomed back into the sport.
Yeah, and that why I asked is because I kind of figured you'd answer that way. I think that's something that someone should potentially hang their hat on if they want to come back.
Yeah.
The people are the people, right? And the endurance-minded people are the people. They're going to be welcoming. They're going to be supportive. There will be people that'll go for a ride with you. Go for there's
Mm-hmm.
swim groups. Those are still there,
Yeah.
and you'd be surprised, or somebody will be surprised of how easy it is to get back into it from that side of things. And if you have those as anchors, you got good people around you, even if it's new people, right? It's probably going to be new people.
Mm-hmm.
Some might remember you from a while ago, but really, it's most likely it's going to be new people. Embrace that.
Yeah, for me, it was a totally different region. I hadn't raced out here at all, and so I knew absolutely nobody. But that's interesting you say that because I do know some people are sometimes hesitant about getting back into the sport when it's the same region because your performance may be dropped off, and you're like, oh, I don't want to go back and my performance doesn't match what I was doing before, and people will know, and this and that. But at some point, we have to move beyond that, and we need to be making choices for ourselves and what brings us joy. And I remember just re-enjoying the triathlon experience, and that's what really pulled me back into the sport. It wasn't the times. It was a challenge to try to go faster and do the next race better and so forth. But it was still the enjoyment of doing, getting to the start line and hammering away and getting to the finish.
Yeah, I love the fact that you mentioned this because we've talked about this before, even recently, about what goes on in your mind and your perception of like how you're finishing, and you're thinking that other people are judging you, right? It's like, well,
Yeah.
5 years ago, this guy was the best guy in town,
Yeah.
and they took a hiatus and they came back, and the mindset is like, well, I need to be the same person I was.
Yeah.
You're not, and it's okay, right? Because honestly, nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you
Mm-hmm.
care, maybe your family cares or whatever, but nobody around you really cares. If anything, they don't want you to be that good because then they have a chance to beat you, right? Like, nothing would be worse than the guy that was the best in town 5 years ago coming back, and everyone's like, "Oh man, shoot,
Yeah.
we're all in trouble." And then they come in and they're human, and it's like, "Oh, okay, like they're human too." Like, it's actually a good thing
Mm-hmm.
in the grand scheme of things. But I've actually talked to people about this. They're like, I don't want to race because I don't want to embarrass myself.
Yeah. Right.
Like, embarrass yourself. Like, get to a point where you could finish the race. There's no embarrassment there. Well, but I used to be so fast. So, like, what are you gonna do? Like, legally change your name so you can start again? Like,
Yeah. Right.
it's why do you race? We've talked about this many times. Like, we've talked about a lot. We've raced for community and for health and for our mental well-being and all of these things, and it doesn't matter, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about this before. Our New Zealand races, both of us, like, those were some really poor times.
Yeah.
Why did we go do it? Because we enjoy the experience. We enjoy what we're doing, and we recognize that people aren't judging us for going.
Yeah, and I'll actually offer that because the last year has been tough for me, and right now I'm at a point where I don't know if I'm going to race this year at all. But when I have gone to races and haven't done well, I've actually gotten some really nice compliments about, hey, it's great to see you're still in the sport type of compliments, and that's inspiring for others to see that we're not doing getting on the podium is fantastic. There's nothing better. Well, there's not. I said that wrong, but it's a thrill to be able to do that. Overall podium, age group podium. That's just really super cool. But that's not the driving factor. And I think it is good for people to see that as you get older or injured or whatever it is, or you don't have time to dedicate to the sport in terms of training, but you still go and race, there's a respect that the community gives to those types of folks. So I always encourage people, if you love the sport, do the sport, and don't worry about the times, because no one will remember the times down the road. It's what we remember and what we want to do, and so yeah, it's I've actually gotten some really nice compliments that way.
The other thing, and I've advised somebody on this as well. That was basically they're asking me questions about this topic, and I said, go race out of the region. If you really feel like that, go drive to California. Do a couple races there. Don't even tell anybody you're going, because nobody's going to go look it up. Because there's in the summer in California, there's 2 or 3 triathlons every day or every weekend. So go race some random races there where nobody knows you, nobody knows your history. Just go do it and see like how you feel and where you're at, and build your confidence potentially that way, and set your expectations based off of your fitness of where you are. And so that's another little piece of advice I've given people that they're worried about the perception in their own backyard would potentially be.
Yeah, no, and sometimes we have to evolve in the sport, and that's what I'm doing right now, is that rather than focus on racing, because I literally can't run. I'm just at that point. I can do other things, and I can help in other ways, and still do this podcast, and still connect with others, and encourage. And I still get a thrill out of going to a race and cheering people on. And so there's other ways to still enjoy the community. So it is a matter of trying to find out. But we're getting a little off topic though with getting back into the sport.
I think it's still the topic, right? Because I think it all is hand in hand.
Yeah.
Right. Because John, we're all hoping desperately for you that this hiatus is going to be a short one, and you're going to be able to come back again. And so this might be another situation where
I'm trying.
Absolutely trying. But no, I think that these are all relevant things to talk about. The other thing, kind of in this realm of the, why we do what we do, and if the results are really, they matter to you, is thinking about it in a bigger context. For the most part, if you do well, let's say you get on a podium, and then, John, I know you've been on lots of podiums, I've been on lots of podiums, you're beating strangers. For the most part, right? Yeah, like it's always nice back in the day when you and I would race at Pumpkin Man and we knew each other, and but for the most part, like 95% or 99% of the people in the race are strangers.
Yeah.
So what is the true thrill of beating 99 strangers?
Right.
Right? Like the real, like you said, the real thrill to us now is like the betterment of the sport and the community and all of these things, and not worrying about the random stranger that comes out and beats you or not. I think it's a really mature way to think about it. And if you're coming back to the sport, hopefully you're mature to feel that as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I definitely found the trap of trying to place and going into a race and trying to be in this position. And that's dangerous because you don't know who else is going to be at a race. And it's dangerous because you may not hit that place that you wanted. And now all of a sudden you're looking at the race as not successful, even though you maybe had a great race time, but you didn't hit the position that you wanted. And so it did take me a little bit of time to eventually get to a point where I'm like, I can't worry about the place. I just need to race. And wherever I fall, and I'm going to be happy with it. That did take some very intentional thought process on approaching a race that way. And others who are listening to this may need to do the same thing. Is don't gauge your success on what other people are doing. And other people are the place. And so even if you want to race, you still can't gauge that as a success if all you're doing is comparing yourself to the other competitors in the sport. I know that sounds odd, but success really is individually defined. And I eventually got to a point, if I can race the way I want to race, and I hit that finish line, I'm super happy. And wherever the place fell, it fell. And I learned how to enjoy the sport at a deeper level that way, as opposed to even measuring success based upon podiums or place.
And I think this is more relevant when you're coming back.
Yeah.
Right? Because the
Yeah.
chances are not going to be like up there, right? And that's an okay. Once again, it's an okay thing, but you have to, like, in my mind, you don't have to do anything. But
Yeah.
once you accept that
Mm-hmm.
and start to think in that mindset, I think you become a lot happier.
Yeah.
And eventually will become more successful, right? Because now you're seeing where you're at, and like maybe you're also seeing these other people where you want to be, and you can set a goal of, hey, you know, I want to improve my fitness to the point where I am on a podium.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not there now, and and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be this is a process, and I'm going to build this process to ultimately where I want to be. But in the same context, you can go do a race where nobody that's really good shows up and get a podium right away.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're this ultimate athlete.
Right. Right.
Wouldn't it be funny if like at Pumpkin Man, the USA Triathlon did a training camp down the road, and they're like, oh, we're all going to do Pumpkin Man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
And next thing you know, like, you know, we're fighting for individual podiums or whatever. Like, oh my gosh, I finished 36th.
Yeah.
Race I normally get on the podium. Well, and you look at it and it's like USAT member, or champion. Like, it doesn't, once again, it doesn't take away anything from you. Right. And it's very, I think it's very relevant to the conversation.
Yeah. And you're right. You know, when you're coming back, you got to have the right mindset and really, spend and be intentional about that, because it's not something that, if you don't pay attention to it, my thought is you'll gravitate back to old competitive self and old, performing self. And now your expectations are up here, but where you really are is down here. And you can get discouraged easy if that's where you're at. But if you're doing it for the love of the sport, and I don't mean to be rainbows and butterfly here. I do mean, it is an enjoyment of competing. But what's that sign say? Your greatest opponent will be yourself. I mean, that's why I got that there, is because that's true. It really is. And when you can, when you can accept that, then easing back into the sport is a lot easier, and being patient is a lot easier. And really, that's the key to coming back.
Well, I love that what you just said, by the way. That's like the best thing with this whole podcast. Easing back into the sport.
Yeah.
That's how you got to kind of I think that's the best way to approach it. Is like, I'm easing back in, and it's kind of like any other thing in life. Where you're going to do something you've done before. You're going to ease back into it, and don't get me wrong, like, triathlon is a hard thing to ease back into.
Yeah.
We're talking about quite a significant commitment for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Bike and run, and maybe, and this is another idea I was thinking about. Maybe you ease back in by going into one sport.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I did, get to running, or just get to swimming. And actually, I ran into somebody at the pool the other day. I hadn't seen her in a while, and she used to do triathlon, and I hadn't seen her else. I'm like, well, what's going on with you? And she's like, well, I retired. And I'm like, okay, like, what's happening? She's like, I'm easing back into swimming.
Good. Mm-hmm.
Right. And she told me, she's like, and then I'm gonna start bike riding, and then I'm gonna start. She was actually, I know she doesn't even listen to the podcast, but she was one of the reasons I wanted to do this talk, is just her approach. Like, well, I've got time now.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that she basically said that. It's like, oh, I'm easing back in.
Mm-hmm.
And then her approach was exactly what we're talking about.
I love it. Well, and what's important when you do come back, you've got to find the time again to train, and you got to work that back into your schedule. And I remember another way that I eased back into it was I'd go for a swim. I literally would swim 200 yards.
Right.
I wasn't going for the 200 yards. I was going because I wanted to start putting, and we've talked about this in the past. I wanted to put an anchor in my schedule that this was my swim time. And so traveling, getting to the pool, getting changed, getting in the water was only one part of that. And I needed to have that in my schedule. That's just the way I operate. And then as I started building that into my regular routine, I could start expanding my swim out. So even going for a 200-yard swim, it seemed ridiculous to do that. But getting an anchor in the calendar in your day, this is what I'm going to do on this day at this time is I'm going to do a swim. And it doesn't have to be a long swim. And then once you start building up the fitness and a little bit more time, you can add to them.
Yeah. The one other thing I was going to talk about was also having faith in yourself, that the stuff you did when you were younger actually matters. So yeah. It's actually easier physiologically to come back to a sport than it is to start brand new. And don't think, oh, I've been gone for 10 years or whatever, 5 years, and think that you actually have nothing. Because
right.
There's a lot of good research on this, and looking at things like bone density, tendon health, just muscle health. If you have a history of doing sports and doing endurance sports or doing some kind of sport historically, there still is some positive things that are still there. If you've put on, let's say 50, 60 pounds or whatever the case may be, there's still a lot that's under the chassis that you've developed when you were younger that is there. And you can kind of put your mind at ease that it's still, some of it's still there.
No,
and then,
it's sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and then the technical side too, right? Like you've been there, like especially if you've done triathlon, you know it's a bike run. You know how it feels.
Right.
You know how it feels to kind of push yourself hard. You know what it feels like to run off of the bike. You know that there's you know these little things. There's a transition area, and how you set it up matters. And you know, like you got to wear a wetsuit, and you know kind of how to take it off and put it on. And there's a lot of little things that you actually know. You're not at the beginning. You're not a beginner. Even though you're easing back in, you actually have a lot of things already, a lot of arrows in the quiver.
Yeah, no, totally. And each sport, as you said, each sport's a skill set. And you know, there is a learning that happens to be a better swimmer, biker, and runner. It may not necessarily be something that we're trying to, work on our running skill, but when we're every day that we go running, we're working on our running skill. It just naturally happens. And so you're right. There is that experience that comes back, and it's the mindset too of what it takes to train. We always talk about having a crystal ball. If I do what I do today isn't going to help me today, it's going to help me 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the road. And having that knowledge that the training does take a period of time is an important part of coming back on where it is, like you talk about, probably a little easier coming back versus just starting out.
Awesome. Well, John, I actually, believe it or not, have to get going. So we like I said, we have the first Tri Club race tomorrow. I'm doing it. I haven't done a Tri Club race in I think 5 years.
Oh, there you go.
So I haven't packed anything. It's been a busy week, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta pack my stuff up because it's gonna be an early morning. But I'm super looking forward to getting out to the lake tomorrow. I hope the wind stays down and we can actually.
It looks by 8 o'clock we're okay. 10 o'clock it looks like it's going to get super windy. So hopefully we'll have most people in at that point. And see, I'm not racing, but I am packed. I got the trailer down in my driveway. I got all the gear in it. So that's my packing nowadays. So
you did your packing. I've done nothing so far. I don't even know what I'm wearing. I don't know. Yeah, I've done basically nothing. Now I did do a bike race on Wednesday night, so my bike is in pretty good shape. So
all right, good deal. Well, it'll be fun. You'll enjoy it.
I'm honestly, I'm really looking forward to it because I don't know, like these low key local stuff.
Grassroots.
All right. Well, hey, thanks, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everyone.